What's going on, Nasty Nation? It's Nasty, and today I wanted to share with you all a few key tactics that I used in order to reach Challenger this past season. Now, not many people actually know that I hit Challenger though, so just for the doubters out there, here's a screenshot and here's the raw footage of me actually hitting Challenger for the first time. And I should also mention before we start the video that the majority of the things on this list can apply to other roles, even though I happen to use them in the support role, so feel free to take any advice that you may learn throughout this video and apply it to your role, even if that role is not support. With all of that out of the way, let's jump right into the video. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I was hard stuck Masters for the large majority of the season, but the turning point for me came when I decided to dedicate myself. You see, playing League for fun is completely fine. I mean, some people prefer to keep their gaming strictly carefree, and I get that, but that's not how I personally am. I wanted to achieve something, and in order to do so, I had to dedicate myself and work hard towards achieving that goal. I started taking each and every game a lot more serious, and dedicating myself to working hard day in and day out. The most important step I had to take as far as dedicating myself came down to setting time aside for me to grind away. Playing League 6 to 10 hours a day might seem super extreme to some people, but I honestly feel that was necessary and that was just the step that I needed to take. Practice really does make perfect, and the more practice I got every day, the closer I was to reaching that Challenger goal of mine. I would say the next biggest factor, if not the biggest factor that aided to my climb to Challenger, was my shift in mentality. Now, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you guys and claim to be a perfect role model in the League of Legends community, because quite frankly, that's not who I am, or at least that's not who I was. Prior to my climb to Challenger, let's just say I wasn't the most sportsman-like player. I had my fair share of toxic moments, and although I'm not proud of it, I'll still own up to it. But when I changed my mentality, I just started to climb a lot easier. I started focusing on improving rather than winning. Obviously, winning games feels more rewarding, but you can learn equally as much, if not more, in the games that you lose. Instead of blaming my teammates for my lost games, I started asking myself what I could have done better to win that game. Although some games might seem flat out unwinnable, there's always something that you could have done better to better the odds of that game ending in a victory. If you're looking to climb the way I did in this past season, I highly recommend looking back at your games played and trying to find ways to improve, rather than just losing your games, picking a teammate to blame it on, and moving on to the next game. Another one of those very small things that can go a long way is communication. Communication in League of Legends essentially boils down to pings and team chat, but it's how you decide to use those features that really makes a difference, and how exactly you should use them varies from person to person. The thing is, some people aren't the most level-headed and they don't know how to use their pings and chat properly. They often flame and spam ping their teammates whenever things start to look a little grim. On the other hand, there's players who don't utilize their pings or chat nearly enough. Instead of trying to productively communicate with their teams, they just let the game play on with little to no impact on team decisions. For me personally, I fell somewhere in the middle. I wasn't excessively flaming and spamming my teammates, but I was flaming nonetheless, and I wasn't communicating and shot calling the way I knew I was capable of. So again, I had to change my mentality to focus more on myself in the game rather than my teammates. I started using my pings and my chat as a way to shot call and offer suggestions to my team rather than using them meaninglessly. Again, it can vary from person to person, but there is almost always some change that can be made to better your odds of winning games. If you can figure out what kind of changes you need to make the way I did, then you should start seeing yourself climb a lot easier. Moving on to some things on the more basic side, there's the fact that I started to abuse OP champions. So, playing OP champions is a tip that is repeated over and over in and out of just about every League of Legends guide out there, so I'm sorry for sounding like a broken record here, but it really does make a difference. For the longest time, I know I was just too stubborn to play OP champions, but finally, after giving it a try, I started to see instant success. It's a very easy tactic to pull off, and it could just go a long way. The way I went about with this was as simple as looking up win rates and playing whatever champion had the highest win rate for my role at that specific time. The easiest example I could offer here is when the Ardent meta had just begun, and Rakan held one of the highest support win rates for the time being. During that brief period, I just spammed Rakan as much as I could. I gained my elo, and then as soon as he got nerfed, I stopped playing him. Some simple rinsing and repeating of this method with the highest win rate champions at the time was a major key in my climb to Challenger. Before I get back into the more detailed tactics that I used during my climb, I'd like to just briefly mention how effective having a small champion pool can be. Challenger only has room for the 200 best of the best players in each region. With millions of players playing League of Legends every day, that's a very difficult group to fit into. Challenger can and will often be decided by the smallest of margins, and having a small champion pool will ultimately allow players to be more experienced with their champions, giving them that edge they need to push them to the next level. Obviously though, this can be equally as effective in any other rank as well. If you're looking to push yourself onto the next level or just to that next rank, try narrowing down your champion pool to get that slight edge over your opponent. Having a small champion pool means that you practice the same champions over and over, which means you know that champion better than anybody else, and that's why it's so effective. So a bit earlier in the video, I touched a little bit on how watching replays can help you improve. Well, watching the replays of professional players who play the same role as you is just as impactful. For example, by watching the stream VODs of former IMT and rank 1 support player Olay, I was able to pick up on new builds, rune choices, spell orders, and different ways to ward, lane, and roam, and then be able to apply that to my own games. And through picking up on these new concepts that I would have never discovered on my own and applying it to my own games, I was able to be a lot more productive and efficient in my games. Professional players have simply played a lot more than us, and therefore they know a lot more than us. Use their knowledge to your advantage and just try to learn from them. We are very fortunate to have the ability to watch players practice in esports, whereas the practices of traditional sports teams are kept private. Do not waste that opportunity. Another tactic that I learned during my climb was patience. One of the biggest mistakes I see players making in their games is just getting overeager. Players are always so anxious to get a solo kill or a neutral objective or a tower that they often force plays and end up setting themselves behind when they were trying to put their team ahead. I had to learn to be patient and wait for openings to make my plays in my games. Piggybacking off of that idea, I want to talk a little bit about focusing on the early game. Keeping 100% of your focus on the game from start to end can be a really difficult task for some people, including me. For one reason or another, my mind just does not have the greatest attention span, and it can cause me to get outplayed from time to time just because I'm not focusing as much as I should be. The early game though is the time you want to focus up the most. With players wanting to open mid being such a common act these days, you don't want to be on the side that falls behind early. Especially in mine with the idea I mentioned previously regarding how often players get overly anxious, you really want to make sure you're on your toes and ready to take advantage of the early game and get your team off to a good and solid start. Just focusing on being patient and getting ahead early was super vital to my success. And finally, the last thing that I want to talk about is confidence. Confidence is something that I personally lacked for a very long time as a player. I was playing inconsistently, I was falling in and out of masters, and I just didn't feel as though I was improving or getting any better at the game, which really hurt my mental ability to play the game. But one day I was looking for a stream to watch, and I just so happened to decide to watch Lorlo's stream, who is the former Team Liquid top laner for those of you who don't know. And during his stream, someone who he had just played against donated to him and said something along the lines of, "I was so scared to play against you." And instead of just accepting the compliment and moving on, Lorlo decided to tell the guy that you should never play scared. He said if you're playing scared, you'll never be able to make the plays that you need to make in order to win the game, and that he should be confident in himself and his ability to outplay the opponent no matter who it was. For some reason, that clicked for me, and I was able to be a lot more confident in myself as a player from that day on. I have to credit Lorlo entirely for enabling me to find my own confidence, and I hope that through watching this video, some of you guys who are watching were able to find yours. That is, however, going to compile all the different things that went into my successful climb to Challenger this past season. I really hope you were able to learn something new by watching, and hopefully you can apply that to your own games and have your own personal success. I should also mention before closing out the video that I did a very similar one for when I hit Masters for the first time that kind of goes over the things that worked best in my climb there, and it originally got a lot of good feedback as well, so I highly recommend going and checking that out. If you did happen to enjoy the video though, or find it to be helpful, please consider dropping a like and letting me know down in the comments below. Also, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and with that, I will see you guys next time. Peace.